Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start our next session, and we're going to have another opportunity when this is over to move over to our reception area when this is all done, and we're going to continue with some of this great networking. What a pleasure. I met about 6 of you who I had not spoken to before and have made some great contacts already, and I watched a lot of you interact and enjoy each other's company. I want to say that last session that Pat chaired, or was the host of, that featured Jason and Andrew, to the fantastic and a lot of learnings and a lot more learnings that will be had from that from what we heard from that messaging. Next, I'd like to introduce for you via a video presentation, Arina Korchmarov. Arina lives in Boston, and she's the Vice President, North American Vice President for Cote. We all know that all this validation and all the carbon credits that we're going to produce agriculturally, forestry, hydrocarbon, methane extraction, methane destruction, mining, all of those need to be tested. Cotecna is one of the top 3 testing firms in the world, with offices all over the world out of Geneva, Switzerland. And they are certainly wanting to take a leadership role in helping us decarbonize. So with that, I really would have us give a warm welcome of applause, even though she'll be on video, to Arina, and she'll give us an opening message. So ready to go. Thank you.
Change, it is hard not to notice things are changing. It's the responsibility of each and every one of us to do our part so together we can make a difference. Many of you will not be yet familiar with Cotecna. In layman terms, we provide testing, inspection, and certification services to businesses and governments. At its core, our work helps make supply chains safer and more efficient. The conference is important to Cotecna because ensuring a positive impact on our planet and society is one of the key principles of our company values. Our commitment to the environment is also a key theme in our sustainability program. It's important to me personally, as I strongly believe that if we associate science and environmental concerns, not just with the school subjects or laboratories or protocols, if we treat it as a way of thinking, our world will become safe and beautiful place to live, work, and raise our children.
Let's get a round of applause for Arina and Cotecna. So thank you, Arina, for providing that for that message and for the support of the Global First Nations Carbon Summit. I'm really excited to announce my panel on environmental sovereignty, and I'm joined by Chief Heidi Cook. If you want to come up, and we'll give you a round of applause. And we're also joined by Sheldon Wuttunee, the CEO of the Saskatchewan First Nation Centre of Excellence. Let's give him a round of applause, please. All right, so I'm very grateful to be joined by my fellow panelists today, and we've had a lot of time to visit and get to know one another. And I'm really excited to hear what they have to say on the topic of environmental sovereignty. It's a topic that we talk a lot about at the organization that I work for, which is Carbon RX, and I'm the Manager of Business Developments. And I'm happy to be your moderator today. Awesome. All right, so I've just given a brief introduction of both of you, but Chief Heidi, do you want to explain to our audience in person and online on your role as Chief of Misipawistik?
Sure.
Let's see. Oh, I think you're good now.
Am I on? Agusa.
Good.
There we go.
Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to thank the chiefs and counselors, the elders of Treaty 4, first for welcoming me. I come from Treaty 5 territory at the end of the Saskatchewan where it enters Lake Winnipeg. And my other name is Kananatawapit. And in the language is Cree, so you guys probably understand Kananatukwapit. We don't have that word in our Cree, but that's who I am. And yeah, I've been chief for 2 years, and before that I was a counselor for 6. And the reason why I decided to run for chief is, just an extension of the work I started in the lands department. And for me, rebuilding traditional governance systems expressed in a modern way is, kind of where I nerd out. That's where, I get excited about the work. And we started that in our lands department when we started building a Indigenous Guardians program, or we call them Kanawenistigewak. And, we had a number of management issues in our territory with overfishing, overhunting, and forestry clearcutting. And our guardians have been able to address all 3 of those in a really good way, based on the traditional laws that our people were given when we were given this as our home at Misipawistik. And we have been very effective in seeing change, not based on enforcement of any laws, but on education and encouraging compliance. And this is actually a culmination of a lot of the work we did. I call this our constitution because at the center is Minopamatisiwin, and that's the reason why we do everything, is to make sure we have a good life and a good life for our children. And in this design, there's a lot of the values that our elders told us were important, that we need to make sure that we teach our children so that we can have a good life. And that's what we build our land laws on. That's what we're now working on for other areas of our governance, our CFS, our health, our education, those kind of things. I realize now I'm starting to go on too much, and I was just supposed to introduce myself. I'm sorry.
You started answering all my questions. That's not fair. Trying to write new ones now.
Sorry.
Sheldon, can you take a few minutes to explain your role as a CEO and some of the goals that you had set when you took the position?
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sheldon Wuttunee. I'm from Red Pheasant Cree Nation, south of North Battleford here. I'm a Cree as well. My traditional name is Biesukanipoet, which is Standing Thunderbird in our language, and certainly a name that I carry and gravitate to, in my professional and personal life. And our Center of Excellence here in Saskatchewan is a unique organization that I'm very proud to be able to represent and be a part of. We have a board of directors, which Chief Belrose is one of our board of directors as well for the Touchwood Agency Tribal Council. And, we have an appointment from each of our tribal councils across the province, as well as our independent First Nations, and also the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations. So it's a great organization that provides opportunity for engagement, but also accountability back to our 74 First Nations here, to environmental or impact assessments, to business development, really across the spectrum. And we're very proud to have this organization within the province. And, we certainly encourage other provinces to step up and support something similar. And sometimes it's difficult to, bring everybody's perspectives into the fold, but it's certainly something that we all need to work towards. And when we're looking at environment, sustainability,
as you mentioned, our traditional laws, our natural laws, as we talk to, those are very important and guide our decisions as First Nations people. And I always share, in my experience as chief, and I guess bringing that to the center, when we engage with industry or we engage with government and we're seeking opportunity, the question often that comes back is, well, what capacity do you have? And we kind of know, but we don't always fully know. And it's very important that as we engage, as we work together, as we collaborate, that we look at that from a technical perspective, capacity a lot of times. But now the globe is starting to recognize and understand that as First Nations people and our ties to Mother Earth and the Creator and our relationships to animals and plants and those types of things, we have immense capacity. And it was shared before. We don't always need advice. We need to give advice, and it needs to be listened to across the globe. And we're starting to face a lot of those prophecies and ideals that our elders have shared with us for many, many years. So I'll leave it there for now. I'll certainly share more on that because it's a very important perspective as we do move forward in this clean energy space, carbon credit space, and looking at environmental sovereignty and what that means.
Thank you, Sheldon. Chief Heidi, do you maybe want to cover for those that might not know what our natural laws are? I'm thinking about some that are, not Indigenous, maybe watching from home or watching overseas. Do you maybe want to touch on some of the things that we as Indigenous people just inherently believe in terms of our natural laws?
Well, in Grand Rapids, we had first contact in 1738, I think it was, or 42. So when I was growing up, and even when my parents and grandparents were growing up, it was there was no ceremonies, but our people were still very strong in identity and teachings of the Cree. So I know that a lot of the, there's certain teachings that go along with the ceremony. But when we did our own work here at home, we asked our elders, what are the important things that you were taught when you were growing up about how to give a good life? So that's why this is what we came up with, eh? Mm-hmm. And respect was one of the most important things. You have respect for other people, but also respect, like Wuttunee is not just our family, but it's our all the trees, the lake, all the animals. Those are all our relations. So our relationship to our home, mm-hmm. and all the living things that make up part of it is part of us too, right? And we always have to respect all of those relationships. That's one of the most important things, and that's what surrounds this entire design. And then the other, Bob Ray talked about love. He surprised me too. But yeah. I really believe that that is important value that we have to use to solve a lot of the problems that we're seeing. Because I don't think that just burning fossil fuels is the problem. I think that greed is the problem, and that love can be the solution for a lot of that, right? So it's just a different way of looking at some of the problems. Let me cheat here and look down here. To be to have courage, right? Mm-hmm. The right thing is not always the easiest thing to do, but that courage comes from love as well, and to be honest in your words and your actions and those kind of things, right?
Yeah,
those
absolutely.
are the traditional laws or the natural laws. Even Wuttunee, like I think of climate change in that way as well, right? Like because we're not respecting the earth, and that's coming back. It's going to make things harder for our children, so we have to try and address it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Sheldon, anything that you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I think a couple things. I mean, I come from teachings, I guess, from my mom, you know, for the most part. And she's an old schooler about individual sovereignty as it relates to collective sovereignty. And I think even furthermore, environmental sovereignty, and I go back to one teaching or learning over the years is that we can't live without plants, animals, and water, but they can all live without us. And I think that's a real important reminder for us as the human race, is that as the traditional natural laws are shared, that decisions that we make are going to impact and affect the future generations. And I know our leadership and our elders, we're all told that by our people and our elders. And then I always share this as well, because as our traditions, when we go to Sweat or we go to Sundance or, you know, whatever the case may be, us as individuals, sometimes we're provided with gifts or things to carry on to take care of our people. And there's responsibilities that come along with those. And there's messages, there's stories, there's teachings. And with that in mind and how we're going to impact the future, you know, when our leadership engage or deal with a project, deal with industry, with government, they carry that in every decision that they make. And we talk about reconciliation, and the reconciliation, leadership has to reconcile with themselves and the Creator in a spiritual world in what decisions that they're going to make for the future, because we have to answer for those. And as Indian people, that's drilled right into us from day one. Mm-hmm. And when we look at environmental sovereignty and what we have, you know, I guess practical control over in terms of our reserve lands, the question will be, how do we implement our laws, our as a government, as a nation that relies on our traditional or natural laws into the greater population, meaning off-reserve, treaty, and traditional territories? How is that going to be respected by municipalities, provincial government regulatory regimes, federal government regulatory regimes? When is it going to make that meaningful impact that we're at the forefront? This opportunity, this carbon offset piece provides an opportunity, I think, to move that marker. It provides an opportunity for us to participate in a conservation initiative on a global scale. There will be hopefully some economic return on that, but I think a lot of it is intrinsic value, that we are able to walk a little closer to our traditional or natural laws to walk that good line. Mm-hmm. But again, we don't have control over the global market of it, which obviously leads to a bit of skepticism. But for each of us that are going to be involved, the due diligence and understanding what that means and how that relates to us as a person or as a nation, that's going to be the important piece moving forward. So
thank you for that, Sheldon. Actually, I want to continue with you. You've already started leading into it, but how do you think the carbon economy is going to impact First Nations? You already started to talk about it. Can you just add a bit more? Would you like to go, Chief Heidi, if you're ready?
He wants to copy what I say.
He gets the easy job, right? He just gets to add. He doesn't have to set the foundation.
Well, I have to be honest. I was never a fan of carbon credits. I saw it as giving a license to pollute, you know. But, you know, I'm also, especially since I've been a chief, I've had to become a bit more pragmatic in how I approach development. And I think of it as, you know, we've been working for a long time at protecting our lands, because when our lands are protected, then we're protected our language, our culture, all those things, right? And there is this necessity because climate change is such a urgent crisis that and the reality of the way the economic system is, there has to be some way of starting to account for pollution if you're going to use that economic system to try and address it. And carbon credits is one of those ways, right?
Yep.
So, you know, if there's going to be a benefit from the work we're doing, then we need to get that benefit. And I don't see it as, you know, a be-all and end-all, but where we're going, it's a step to where we're going, because I would like to see a more fundamental change. But I have to be satisfied with taking the steps and never losing sight of that end goal. Same with, you know, a lot of the work that we do. We've been taking that approach just so that we don't get stuck where we're at. So I feel like, you know, a lot of the First Nations will be in the same place as us, because we have lands that are still rich, and that, you know, that traditional ownership, you know, like the treaties mention logging, but they don't mention carbon, you know, like, so that we retain that, right? That's ours to claim. And we should take every opportunity we can to try and rebuild our economies and rebuild our prosperity, so that we can, you know, reach where we're trying to go. So I hope that, you know, that
Very
this
well
is
said.
something that is going to turn out really well for First Nations.
Very well said. Thank you, Chief Heidi.
100%.
Yeah.
Are we done now? No, I'm just kidding.
Okay,
No,
I'll switch it up.
Yeah, no,
do you have
I-
something?
Yeah, I
Okay.
like that. I just, you know,
Sure.
just further to my question earlier, I think, you know, it's going to be important, you know, for us as First Nations to ensure that we have the opportunity to undertake our due diligence and have the capacity to do that, as individual nations and collectively. You know, obviously it's a market that's based on, you know, aggregates or collectivity in some regard. But just my question earlier is, you know, the different approaches from a forestry-based project to an agricultural-based project are two totally separate opportunities. And I think understanding that, and as we move along this continuum or along this journey, I'll say, this is going to impact globally. But as First Nations, we're not necessarily provided, as was mentioned earlier by Jason, I think, seed funding to be able to ensure that we have capacity. You know, it's difficulty finding seed funding for nations now for lands management and things like that. And this carbon is it's an add-on onto the already burden on staff at the band level. So it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of investment at the forefront. But if it's as valuable as everybody is saying it is, then, you know, the feds and the province need to step up and ensure that our First Nations are well versed and they're able to make decisions on their own 2 feet. You know, we're in UNDRIP times now, and I think it's time to get serious about it in that regard.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheldon.
Yep.
Okay, so another question that I am posing to the group here. Our title of our conference is behind this idea of Indigenomics. Have you both heard it before? Chief Heidi's. Okay. Sheldon, have you heard it before?
Yeah.
Okay. Can both of you maybe spend just a moment just kind of explaining what that idea means to you? So from my understanding, it's a traditional worldview and an access to a modern economy as a right of an Indigenous people. So that's my understanding of it. Sheldon, do you have a different understanding?
I got this one. No. I don't think it strays too far from that. I think, you know, I go back to, I guess, my experience over the years with the center and being a chief. I think, you know, Indigenomics is, you know, how does this economic development, you know, this push for economic development fit into our worldview? Because I think we're continuously being asked to fit our worldview into an economic space, which provides its own, how would I say it, like, it's foreign in a lot of regards. You know, when we go to our elders and talk to them about land and taking up of land or resources, it's tough conversation to have over things that I mentioned earlier. So it's very delicate, but at the same time, regulations, policies, legislation, they're all, you know, especially over the last 50 years, have really undermined that type of conversation to have an impact in terms of our traditional ways. We're finding that to change a bit now. And I think with, you know, things like MMIW, National Truth and Reconciliation, our voices are starting to be heard more. And we need to invest as a country in Indigenous-led projects, Indigenous-owned. Like equity has to be the minimum now. We just have to go down that road. If our companies are proposing a couple jobs and, you know, maybe a contract or two, you know, on a project now, that has to be yesteryear. Because what happens is our nations, they take a keen focus and put time and effort to building partnerships, and really valuable and good partnerships. But the end goal is to make sure there's opportunity for those partnerships on the other side of the table. And I think when we're looking at Indigenomics, that's a big part of it, is ensuring that we're creating, I know we all want to say level playing field, but we need priority in our treaty and traditional areas. That's what we need as First Nations people, because then we can get to a level playing field. But we've undergone, and we've heard all the stories just last week, like we've gone through a lot as First Nations people. And we were put on reserves. There's a permit system put in place to marginalize us from the economy, from the economic table. You know, we were able to get a couple jobs to pick rocks and pick beets and potatoes. And when you look at a massive project, uranium, potash, we don't want to be the rock pickers or the potato pickers. We want to be the owners. So I know that's pretty straightforward, but I just think that's the way we got to go. In Indigenomics, that's how I feel it is, that we're owning, and we're getting pretty adept now as First Nations in what we do. Thanks.
Anything to add, Chief Heidi?
Sure. I should have read up on the background of the term, but because I haven't read the book,
I'll solve that for you in
yeah,
just a minute,
I might
though.
get a copy after this. But when I look at it, I think of you know, like there's this trend of indigenizing and that kind of thing, and it's like putting things, looking at these concepts through a different worldview. And if you're looking at economics, Indigenomics, you know, there's more than one bottom line, right? There's the social bottom line, the economic, the environmental bottom line. And I'm not sure if that's what it is, but that's like kind of the understanding I get from it. Because I think that the Indigenous worldview, around the world, they have these common threads that are very valuable when it comes to addressing big problems like climate change. And it's a different way of looking at the world, and it's a different way of looking at solutions. And that when these worldviews are given, a platform to be shared, when people take them seriously and start incorporating them into different governance systems, that we can create solutions that are more sustainable. And I think that Indigenous knowledge is a gift that we have to share with the world, and that, a lot of the profile of different justice issues, are raising that awareness. After I worked at home for 10 years, I went to do a master's in development practice, working on sustainable development goals and such. I got, I was on the honor roll and all these things because the knowledge that was shared with me by my elders was so cutting edge in academia.
Yeah.
But it's you know, it's just common sense to me. But, you know, I
Yeah.
feel like that's where, you know, the direction where we need to go and not having just these, you know, silos, but to have that Indigenous knowledge that ties everything together.
Exactly. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you. Any closing thoughts that you want to share with the group, Sheldon?
No, I'd just like to thank everybody for being here. I also want to thank Chief Reg for his dedication to, you know, as he mentioned earlier, you know, we gotta push the marker a lot of times, us as First Nations, and sometimes it seems like it's in your face a bit. We try to be as diplomatic as possible, but you know, as been shared up here and through the day, we've been entrusted with our Mother Earth for the future, and we stand by and see a massive economic engine, I'll say, creating $1 billion of capital and revenue that we don't get. And we see it happening down our highways, in our fields, in the mines, and it is billions and billions of dollars. And our First Nations are still administrating poverty a lot of times. So we want to change that. And when we look at environmental sovereignty more specifically, we have a reserve system in Canada, although we have a greater responsibility to our treaty and traditional territories. But that environmental sovereignty has to be looked at that lens, not just the reserve, from us and the greater population, because we have enormous impacts on our reserves from environmental impacts that happen off our reserve. And we're left to deal with those. A lot of times it's water. A lot of times it's just access to animals or what have you. But, you know, water, some of our reserves, you can't drink the water. But we see billions of dollars of revenue going to the feds and the province from a mine that should fix the water quality for us. It's a human right. So there's lots of that stuff that we can talk about. I won't go down that road, but they're very important to mention, because as you leave here and move on to what kind of change can I make, it's certainly being aware of those issues. And economic development is seen as a key to that, to raising the quality of life for us in a practical sense. But we always weigh that with our traditional and natural law way of life, because that's always going to be paramount, because that's our spiritual relationship. So I'll leave my comments there. I thank everybody for being here, but I exceptionally want to thank the leadership that are here to support our elders and you as well as the greater community. It's important conversations for us to continue on. So appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Sheldon. Thank you, Sheldon. Chief Heidi. I agree.
I agree. No, I feel really grateful to be here and to be part of this conversation and to see so many non-First Nation partners willing to come and listen and learn, and you know how to do business and to, you know, work together to lift our communities up, because you know, recognizing the sovereign rights that we have as First Nations, the title to the territories, not just the reserves, you know, like our reserve is so small. It's probably over half muskeg, but we're talking, I want to thank Matt too, for the Director of Forestry for Manitoba, for coming out here. We're going to talk about carbon credits in our entire traditional area, because, you know, like that's where we need to go. We've proven ourselves to the province that we have more effective ways of managing resources, that we have the capacity to do so. And, you know, we've done that with help from other outside partners. you know, and we're not done. We're gonna keep on going, you know, until our kids don't have to have a moldy bedroom, and you know, like 15 people are not inside a 3-bedroom house. We need to have a good life for our children, to know that they're valued. I need my kids to grow up and have clean drinking water and to have clean air, you know. My daughter, she okay, never mind. I'm going to start telling another 20-minute story. And I don't think we have that long. But that's, you know, like, that's who we need to do it for. And it's not 7 generations from now. It's the generation that's here right now, you know, like, that is the urgency of these things. So let's get on it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Can I get a round of applause for my panel, please? All right, so I'm going to solve your problem, Chief Heidi. Thank you so much for coming and participating. I really appreciated your words. Thank you, Sheldon. There you go.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Wonderful. Thanks,
Appreciate
you
it.
guys.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
It's great.